Hello, welcome to the Rezzed Developer Sessions for 2017. I hope you're having a lovely day. I hope you found lots of lovely games to play. Don't forget, at 3 p.m. following this session, we do have another session, which is Knights and Bikes with Rock, Paper, Shotgun. But now, right now, let me introduce Swen Vincke from Larian Studios, Creative Director, to talk to you about Divinity Original Sin 2.
Hello, everybody. So today we'll talk a little bit about how we created the story in Divinity Original Sin 2 and the processes that were involved in making it so that when it gets finally released, you guys are going to have some fun. Before I start, maybe it would be good to see if there's people can tell me if they played the first Original Sin. Can I see a little show of hands? All right. And are there people who have tried Divinity Original Sin 2 in early access already? All right, great. So all of the stuff I'm going to show to you is new because I'll start at the very beginning of the game to explain a couple of things. We'll jump into gameplay in a second, but before I start, I just wanted to tell you what the big idea is behind Original Sin 2. The thing we're trying to do is to create a game that is going to feel to you as if you're playing a pen and paper game with a very good game master. And that implies a couple of things. That first of all means that we have to make a game that allows you to do the things that you do in a pen and paper game. And it also means that we have to make a game that you can play on your own or with a bunch of friends. And it also means, if we want to have a very good game master, that the game actually has to adapt to your playing style, because if you've ever done one of those pen and paper games, then you'll realize that if the game master doesn't adapt to the playing style of the players, you are going to be in for a very boring experience. Now, that's easier said than done, and so what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at how we integrated a whole bunch of mechanics and systems into the game to make you feel as if you're actually playing a pen and paper game. So we're going to start by looking at some gameplay, and I'll just explain as we go along. So we're currently in character creation, and this is a custom character, and so there's a bunch of things that I can do. I can modify his race, so I can play as a human, as a lizard, as a dwarf. I can obviously also change the gender, so I can, and I can also play as an undead, but that one is not being shown right now. Now I can modify the presets that you're going to start playing with. So here you see a ranger, a rogue, shadowblade, wayfarer, witch, wizard, battle mage, cleric, conjurer, enchanter, fighter, inquisitor, knight, and the metamorph, which is the one I actually want to pick for today. So, and when you're creating a custom character like that, you can decide what background you're going to have. So you could say, for instance, I'm going to be a scholar and a barbarian. And then what's going to happen is that everybody in the world is going to talk to you as if you are a male lizard who is also a scholar and a barbarian. So it's one of the big ideas of creating your custom character in Original Sin 2, that you have these tags and that the world reacts to it, so that you get to do some role-playing. But another thing that we introduced, something that we didn't have in the first Original Sin, is background stories. And we call these origin stories. And these origin stories, they basically give you a preset amount of text, and they also give you an entire new list of quests and situations that you're going to encounter in the game. So for instance, this guy here is Ifan Ben Metzt, and you see that he has the tag Ifan, and that means that whenever people are going to, that he's going to encounter people that might know him, there's going to be special dialogue options for him, and that is going to lead to new and unique and original quests. And like this, we have a bunch of background stories, 6 to be precise, and currently on our early access version, there are 4 that have opened up. So Ifan is an ex-crusader who's turned outlaw, and so at the start of the game, he's going to have a mission to assassinate somebody. This is Lose. She hears voices in her head. She's like a hotel for spirits. She also happens to be a rock star. This is the Red Prince. He is the heir to the throne in the Ancient Empire, has been exiled because he has been cavorting with demons. And then this is Sibyl. She is an ex-slave from the Ancient Empire. She's an elf. She escaped, and she's on a mission of vengeance. Pretty much a Kill Bill story. Now, the thing that these characters all have in common is that they all had a manifestation of a type of forbidden magic, and that got them thrown on a slave ship. They got a collar around their neck to prevent them from using this magic, and they've been sent to a place called Fort Joy, which we're now going to explore. So I'm going to pick Ifan Ben Metzt, and then I will introduce to you the systems that we used to make the story work and feel indeed like a pen and paper game. And we're going to start with a wizard because it allows me to, where is he? Yeah, there you go. Okay. All right, so I'm going to skip all the cutscene things. So we skipped the entire tutorial here. In the tutorial, we were on board of that slave ship. Big kraken popped up. Somebody tried to kill us. Everybody was drowning, and we washed ashore on the island where we find ourselves. We're a couple of hours later in the game. And this is actually the start of the content that's currently on early access. And so I'll first quickly demonstrate the basics of the game. So we have our friend Ifan, so you can zoom in, you can rotate your camera, obviously. So Ifan is going to have to find a way, so this is the color I was telling you about. So Ifan is going to have to find a way of getting off this island, because he doesn't want to be here. And we're going to see how he's going to go about doing that. So, like in the first original sin, you can interact with every single item that you can see. You have things like you can create an oil surface. You can put it on fire. If you put the fire on water, then the water is going to evaporate. There's a whole bunch of elemental interactions you can do. For instance, if I'm going to, with my wands, I'm going to create a poison surface, and I put it on the fire, what's going to happen is that, actually I should do that again, otherwise it's not going to be clear. So here I create a poison surface, and so if I put fire on that, what happens is that the poison reacts to the fire, and so I get a little poison cloud that comes out of it, and a little boom that happens. Okay, so quickly an introduction to combat. So I'm going to become a bush here, so I'm going to approach, sneak up to these guys. These are Voidwoken, so the reason why people are locking people like us up in the world is because whenever that magic is used, these guys appear, these Voidwoken. So they're like the initial bad guys in the game. And so what I'll do is I'll just throw a little bit of oil at them. So what you're seeing me do now is I'm playing in turn-based combat. So here you see my turn order. At the bottom of the screen, you see my action points. And everything I do costs action points, including movement. So just throwing that oil or that fossil strike at those guys cost me 2 action points. But now they're in the oil, so what I can do is I can cast my ignition. Ignition is going to do fire damage to the characters in the range. And since they're standing in the oil, it's going to react. The fire is going to react with the oil, so it's going to cause a bit of an explosion. And so that way they'll be burning, so I hope that they're going to burn up as they approach me. And now I'm going to step back, and it's their turn. So they're slowed because of the oil, and they're on fire because of the fire, obviously. So I think that they will not even get to me. This guy's going to be annoying because let me throw some fire darts at them. Okay, so that guy is gone. And so that leaves me with this guy. I'll just wait my turn. So when you skip a turn, your action points go into the next turn. Okay, so that's the basics. So I'll just go and pick up that one resurrection scroll, just in case I die. So there's a resurrection scroll here. Recognize these guys from on the ship with which I was brought here. And we're now going to go and find our first companion. So when we were making the story for Original Sin 2, it was a rather interesting experience because we have been iterating over this thing for 3 years, and that story has been changing pretty much every single day. And the reason why is that we have been game mastering it with ourselves. So we've literally played this campaign over and over and over, and every single time we saw something that worked better than before, we removed the bad bits, we replaced it with the new bits, and like this we evolved to the thing that you're seeing today. Now, as we were doing that, we encountered quite a few problems, and a lot of them were actually caused by the problem of, something I forgot to introduce to you. A lot of these problems were caused by the fact that any avatar that you can pick in the beginning of the game, which is the origin stories that you saw, can also become a companion. So here we see Red Prince. He's the exiled prince that we saw in the character creation screen. And since I didn't pick him as an origin story, he's now going to be present in the game. And the reason we did that is because we figured that we're putting so much content in there for the origin stories, but we know that most players like to create a custom character. So it would be a waste to just throw all of that content away if you don't pick that character. So we said, okay, you know what? We'll let them interact with you as companions, and that way you're going to see their story from a third-person perspective, and you're going to be able to influence it through your relationships with those companions, what happens in the story. What we didn't realize back then was that that was pretty much the beginning of the end for us, because it became incredibly complex. And one of the reasons for that complexity is not only the freedom that you have in the game, but also the fact that you could be playing this in multiplayer. So you could have 4 avatars walking around, and each of these avatars could have picked an origin story, but you could also have 4 custom avatars walking around, and then they would each have one, you could have several custom avatars walking around who would have picked one of the origin stories that you encounter in the game as a companion, and we had to take care of every single permutation that could be caused by that. So that was a little bit of a rambling, but it'll become clear as we progress. All right, so this guy here, I'm going to try to recruit him. So I'm going to summarize the dialogues for you, because otherwise it's going to take us too long. But suffice it to say that this guy is pretty arrogant. He used to be a prince. He doesn't still realize why he's here. And you see that I get my tag human here. So that is one of those tags that I got at the beginning of the game, and it allows me to pick options that are only going to be there for a human. And one of the ideas that was present in Original Sin, that's present in Original Sin 2, that wasn't in the original game also, is that if you take control of a particular character, you want the entire world to address you as if you are that character. So if you were to talk with him as a lizard, and you would have recognized him, and you would have had options to tell him, "Aren't you the prince?" And then he would have answered, "Of course I'm the prince," and so forth. So I'm just going to go through his dialogue, recruit him. So I'm going to tell him, "Do you want a companion?" He says no. So then I'm going to convince him, tell him that we can escape together. And so he asks me to promise him something, and the thing that he asks me to promise him is that should we encounter a lizard dreamer, that I'm going to allow him to go off with that dreamer. So I just promised him that. And so the next thing he's going to ask me is what would I want him to be? So this is something that came out of early access. We noticed that players wanted to actually have control over what type of character archetype the companions would be when they recruit them. So you can actually change. Currently he's a blade master, but we could turn him into, for instance, let's do that, into a metamorpher. That's the guy that can polymorph himself and others. Okay, so let's say, okay, that settles it. So now he's telling me how he wants to be addressed. He really is very arrogant. And now he's become part of my party. Now the cool thing in Original Sin 2 is, and another thing that caused a whole bunch of narrative complexities for us, is that you can select another character and you can play as if you are him. Now, so like for instance, here you see this voice bark, and he says, "A black cat, a herald of wisdom in my homeland." How fortuitous. I can't pronounce that, but fortuitous, I guess. That would have been a different line if it would have been Ifan who I was controlling. And when these guys address me, you see they say, "You there, lizard." And if I would have been a human, they would have had a different form of addressing me. It's a small thing, but to make everything maintain consistent, it often leads to dialogues that branch out completely different. And so it added quite a lot of extra complexity. The way that we solved it is really the most straightforward way. Either we replaced phrases in the game, either we just rewrote the entire dialogue and made it fit to the character. And we'll see a couple of examples of that. So I'm just going to get rid of these guys. They're asking me about what happened on the ship. So if there's any survivors, because their friends were on board. So we're not going to lie to them. We could have gotten into a fight with them, and we will progress and go a little bit further north. So we're about to enter a scene, and this is a good illustration of one of the other problems that we have. So in Original Sin 2, you can disconnect your party, because if you're playing in multiplayer, players can go off all over the world as they want, and then the other players have to live with the results of the actions of those players. And so we made that a gameplay mechanic in single player also. So I can basically control Red Prince, and I can become the Rock, and I can just go in there and enter the fort by climbing on this ladder here. And so that's going to lead me potentially into completely different gameplay than what Ifan is going to get. And so let's have a look. So I'm going to send him over there. And meanwhile, I'm going to go back to Ifan, and now I can send Ifan off in another direction. But I'll first go to Red Prince, because I sent him there for a reason. So as he progresses, he gets addressed by this guy here. So this is an interesting situation, because, and another one of the narrative complexities that we had to solve, and for which we had to think very long and hard. not only did we want to give you that pen and paper experience that you could play either on your own or with friends, we also wanted to make sure that should you decide to have a conflict with your friends over anything, there was an option to go into PvP mode. And so when we talked about PvP mode, we not only meant just the ability to fight against each other, but actually to be able to disconnect from the party and have your own story, and then maybe afterwards come back together. And so we started playing around with those ideas, and we said, well, you know what, we can actually make quests that force conflict within the party, and then it's up to the players to pick them up or not. They don't have to, but if they want to, the entire system supports it. It's fantastic when you're a player because it feels very natural. It is super hard when you're thinking about it from the development point of view. So the trick that we used to make it possible is that we introduced a whole bunch of PvP quests. We laced them in with an attitude system, so every NPC maintains an attitude towards another NPC. And so in single player, what happens if you do too many things that are antagonistic to the interests of one of your companions, they're going to leave the party. And in multiplayer, well, it's up to you how are you going to deal with it. So here we have an example of one of those PvP quests. This guy asks me, and he talks to Red Prince, which I'm currently controlling, so I'm talking to him from the viewpoint of Red Prince, so not from my avatar. And he asks me, are you alone? All right. And so what I can do is say, yes, I am. And in that case, I would actually be able to do something which might be against the interests of my party. Now, we're not going to do that right now. Instead, we're going to jump back to Ifan, because I will demonstrate another problem that we had to solve. So here we have Ifan. Now imagine that you're playing, this is a fairly important scene in the main storyline of the game. So imagine that you're playing as one player in multiplayer, and you happen to see this scene. And then maybe Robert is playing as another player in multiplayer, and he is going to be playing Red Prince. So he wouldn't see this scene at all. Yeah, this scene sets the stage for one of the major antagonists of the game, which is this girl here, Dallas the Hammer. And she's about to cut out the tongue of this lizard here and kill her. Well, actually, she's going to force the lizard to cut her own tongue out, and then she's going to kill her. So let me just get through that. So it's an important narrative beat that's being delivered to the players, but there's absolutely no way that we can guarantee that the other players know about it, because you could have already split the party and have gone into, maybe even gone into PvP mode. And if you go into PvP mode, then you don't see the other party members anymore, and you don't get their journal updates either. It's only when you're together in one party that you see that. Still, we would like the other characters to know about what's going on in the world. So when we were thinking about making this game, we had to figure out methods about delivering those narrative beats in a whole bunch of different ways, such that we could guarantee that when players would, for instance, break out of this fort, every single player would know at least a couple of things. That turned out to be quite a hard job, but it's also very satisfying for a player, because the result of that is that there are over 12 ways of getting out of this fort, and when you're playing in single player, you can pick any of these. So it's really up to you how you're going to do things. And that's very similar to what you have in a pen and paper game. And so the same thing happened throughout the entire game. Every single situation that we made, there were always multiple ways of dealing with them, just to be able to take care of the multiplayer aspect of the game. And at the same time, every single situation guarantees that certain narrative beats are delivered to you, such that when players arrive at a certain spot in the game, they actually know everything they need to know to understand what comes next. All right, let's recruit another character here. We're going to recruit Lose. So she was another one of those origin stories that we didn't pick up in the beginning. She's here. So this is the rock star, right? So she is the rock star who has voices in her head. And so what happened to her is that she was having a concert, and then this forbidden magic manifested itself in her, and it drove everybody bananas. So this is similar to something that happened to us. So then she asked me, do you also have spirits in your head? So I'm going to say no. So she doesn't really know who's inside of her head, so that's one of her origin aspects. And so the thing is, if you're playing as Lose as an avatar, you're going to have an origin quest that's going to be about discovering who's inside of my head. But if you're playing with her as a companion, you're going to see how she's experiencing the thing inside of her head from an outside perspective. So we'll see an example of that in a second. All right, I'm going to ask her to be a wayfarer, for instance. So, just a bow. Okay. All right, so she's going to be an archer. So she's going to join me, and we're going to go and have an example. Now, luckily for me, there's a bug in the game, which I'm going to show you right now. And it's a good illustration of the difference between avatar and companion dialogues, the thing that I was just talking about a second ago. So if I'm now controlling Lose, and I'm going to talk to this dwarf here, Laszlo. The dialogue that you're seeing now is actually not supposed to show up when you're playing in single player, but you're seeing the multiplayer version of it, or actually the avatar version of it. So if you would have picked Lose as an avatar, and you would have talked to this guy, then you would see this dialogue. He recognizes me because he used to be in my opening show when I was giving concerts as this medieval bard. And so he asked me, how are you? And Lose has this thing where she can try to deny everything that happened to her, or she can be very open about it. She has to, well, there's a whole bunch of stuff that she has to deal with. Now, this is not supposed to happen in single player. In single player, she's supposed to have a different conversation than this. But I'll show examples that work in a second. So I just wanted to point out that for every dialogue that's happening between companions and or avatars with NPCs in the world that are related to that avatar, we had to bifurcate the dialogues that we made. And if you start thinking about that, you realize that or trees or flowcharts are enormous. And it gets worse, because we're about to see that. Okay, so I'm going to say that I remember him. So we're going to sing a song together, like old times. And so he's going to give me a lute, because he noticed that I don't have any music instrument on me. So if I go to my inventory, we see that I have this lute here. And so I can play on the lute, and that's going to inspire the party. It's going to hasten them. The interesting thing about that is that suddenly their voice in their head starts talking, and he says, destroy the lute. And so she destroys the lute, and so we see from a third-person perspective what happened to her. If you were doing this as an avatar, you would have had a conversation with the voice inside of your head, and you would have to persuade it to not do it. And probably you would have lost that persuasion event. Okay, let's go a little bit further. So we're going to see, yeah, we're running faster because I did the haste thing. Okay, I need to find my way. I actually went a little bit wrong. That's fine. Okay, so we're going to go inside of this cave. And we're going to make a little save game here so I can show you a couple of those permutations. Okay. So remember, as players are exploring all of the things that you're seeing, we're actually trying to tell a story. And because I'm now just picking small situations to demonstrate the different systems that are at play. And every single time when there's a dialogue, we're actually trying to deliver a small narrative beat. Okay, so here I'm going to first, I'm going to talk with Ifan, just to give you an idea of the permutation. So as I approach the young elf, Lose grabs my arm, all right? And she says, I would like to talk to... am I running out of time already?
I thought we could carry on, or we could wrap up.
Okay. Oh, I didn't even... All right, well, let me just finish very fast then, because I actually didn't get to my point that I wanted to make. All right, so Lose is going to wants to talk to the elf. So she interjects. She interjects in my dialogue and says, can I talk to this elf? I think I need to talk to her. And so she asks me, do you mind? And so what I can say is, yeah, sure, go ahead. All right? Or I can say, no, Lose, this is my show. I'm the boss here. That's going to affect my relationship to her. It's going to have an impact on how she's going to look at me. And there are certain points where she does basically a kind of performance review of me. And based on that, she might actually leave my party or indeed decide to do certain things. So if I let her, and since I have to wrap up already, I'm going to do that. If I let her, what's going to happen? Okay, go ahead. She's going to start talking to the elf, and the elf is a seer. She's blind, but she can see the future, and she can also see spirits. And the elf is going to tell Lose, is going to try to tell Lose the name of the demon inside of her head, but the demon doesn't want to know. And so we see from a third-person perspective what's happening to her. And so I can try to intervene, but it's too late already. And so she's going to want to kill the elf, because the demon has taken over her and wants to kill that elf. And so what happens now Yeah, so there's a lot of dialogue in the game. What happens now is that I have to make a choice if I'm going to stand by Lose and let her kill the elf, or if I'm going to try to knock down Lose so that she's going to come to her senses and I can take care of the demon. Now, since I have to wrap up, you have to imagine all the different perspectives that are present here. If I would have been Lose as an avatar and I would have gone and talked to the elf, I would have had the dialogue in which this scene would take place, which would be different because then I would be role-playing it. Now I made a decision that I allowed her to talk to it, but I could have made the decision that I wouldn't have allowed her to talk to the elf, and then afterwards I could have taken control of Lose and gone to the elf and talked to her. These are all different cases, and our writers had to, together with our scripters, had to go through tremendous efforts taking care of every single one of those permutations. So when you looked at it, when we were in the middle of it, it was an absolute nightmare making it. But we've done it now. And it turned out to be very, very rewarding because as you go through the game and you find all of these origin moments that have been placed in the game, and you see all the different angles that exist, it feels natural, which is exactly what you have when you're playing with a good game master. And so I had a little bit more, but I mistimed my presentation, so I apologize for that. But what I wanted to show you is that when you're going to be playing this game, you're not going to think about all these things because everything comes like that. But there's actually an enormous amount of permutations that have been put in to make sure that when you, as a player, get to play it, you feel as if the world is reacting in a normal way to what you were doing. And so with that, if there's any questions, this will be the time to take them. And then you will have to figure out the other parts that I wanted to show some other time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sven, for that. Sorry to cut you a little bit short. So we do have time for questions, and there's a microphone in the middle there. So if you have a question, just get on up and go and stand by the microphone. And thanks again to Sven. And we didn't even see the elves eating corpses, and also people talking to animals as well. So it's worth pointing out as well that this game is in Steam Early Access now. You can play it. You can play that stuff that we've seen. Sven, when's it coming out? When's it going to be finished?
This year.
Okay.
We're working very hard on getting it. It's not that far out anymore, but we're not 100% sure yet. So.
Okay, brilliant. I do recommend playing it, by the way. It's very good. Okay, we'll move to the first question.
Hi there, Sven. So you've gone to kind of demonstrate the efforts you've gone to in order to kind of ensure the permutations of the dialogues. And it was interesting to hear you talk about, while you're in the midst of that, it was actually quite difficult and quite challenging to ensure that, that there wasn't kind of crossovers or things that were repeated and duplicated. It just made me wonder, upon reflection, had you known how much work it would have been, would you have embarked upon that?
Sometimes I ask myself that same question, and honestly, I don't know. I mean, this game has become so big because of what we've done with the multiplayer and also our narrative ambitions, that just wrapping your head around it, there's this phenomena that I see in the office. I see a scripter come to me, and he asks a question, and it's like, an edge case. It's like, so in multiplayer, when you kill that companion, what do you want the avatar to do then? And like, the room typically goes quiet. Oh shit, we didn't think of that. And so, now, as we're starting to see all the results of everything come combined, and now that we have our relationship systems in there, the payoff is tremendous. So we're very proud of it. So I guess that when it's going to be finished and you're going to ask me the question again, I'll probably say yes. But now we're just so, it's like our heads are so buzzing with all the effort that we put in there that maybe we should say, oh man, we should have made Diablo. Something like that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. On to the next question.
Do you know if it will be on a console?
Good question.
We never said that we're not going to put it on console. So that might be our answer. No, we're actually putting the controller support in there right now, but we're first focusing on the PC version. And so if that's successful, then probably there's going to be a console version. But we first really want to make the PC version good, because that's where the majority of our audience is. All right. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. On to our next question.
Hiya. The game's looking... Is that better? Can you hear me? Sorry. The game's looking really good, and it's looking really magnificent. Can I ask, where can I get one of them shirts from?
So I know that my guys who are handling the logistics of the hoodies and the shirts are watching. So soon enough, they should be able to like make them available somewhere online. So there's been some struggle in getting everything sorted out, but they're working on some cool stuff. So hopefully that's going.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Brilliant. And maybe
Nice,
auction
Sabine.
the one that you've... Maybe you could auction the one that you've already worn as well. Okay, next question, please.
So from storyline point of view, that looks amazing because there are so many permutations, as you mentioned. But I'm very interested in multiplayer, and you showed that when companion is an NPC, there is some extra things the player character can do. Will that sort of interaction be available in multiplayer?
Yes. So that's the cool part about it. It's really, because it's drop-in, drop-out multiplayer, I didn't get to this part of the complexity. So you might start with a bunch of companions, and then suddenly that companion gets into the hands of a human player. So that's also a case that we had to deal with. The game is supposed to be played exactly the same if you play in single player as in multiplayer. It's just that when you're playing it in multiplayer, there's more than one avatar. Our ambition is that every single avatar feels as if the story is about him or her. And so that is also like another level of complexity. So we've done a lot of things that I don't think other games have done before, and all these systems together create a very interesting, at least interesting experience, also an interesting development story. But the feeling really is like you play. There was a journalist the other day that did a preview of it, and he said, I felt like I was 17 again playing AD&D, which is exactly what we're trying to do with this. So it's also the difficult balancing act that we have, because people that only play it in single player, they want to have like really serious immersive storyline, whereas if you're playing in multiplayer, you want to goof around. And so finding that balance, that was something, maybe we're a bit too goofy in the previous one, so we tried to fix that in this one. So we wanted to have everything to have more narrative weight and consistency. But we still want you to be able to fool around and laugh with your friends and do crazy shit. And so that has also been a very major challenge in making it.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Can't wait to play it.
All right, cool.
Thank you very much. On to our next question.
Hello.
Hi, this is probably... Closer? Oh, okay. Hi, this is probably less to do with your current game, but I was wondering how you sort of went to... how you basically became the creative director of the first original, Divinity Original Sin. From like...
I'm the founder of Larian Studios, so I have the advantage that I can be a dictator and say, I'm the creative director and not you. So no, so Divinity has been around for some time. So we've been through quite a lot of hoops already in development. And so, I started the company to be able to make my own games. Hence, that's how I got to be the creative director.
Okay.
You can't have my place.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hello there. I'm interested in what sort of unique experience you'll have playing as a custom character, avatar, as opposed to a story character. Because I've played the game, and obviously if you don't know someone as that story character, you might have a very similar experience to just playing as a custom character. I know it's a very broad question, but have you...
No, it's actually a very fair question. About 60% of players that we see play with custom characters, so it's an important question. So the entire main storyline is built around you as a player. So you get an enormous amount of player agency because it's all about you, much more than it was actually in the original game. So we take it as a given that since it's all about you already have your story. It's just that when you do an origin story, you get more story. All right? Now, the problem is with that is that then as a custom character, you're going to say, hey man, I get less story. Right? Because somebody else gets more story. But the fact of the matter is you already get a lot of story. So that's how we handle that, because with custom characters, there's just that much that we can do. The one thing you do have when you're role-playing it, because when you take a custom character, you're actually more interested in creating your own role-playing experience.
Barbarian Noble.
Exactly. There you go, Barbarian Noble, that's the answer to it. So the tags, and the tags that you earn as you're playing the game also, together with all the decisions that you make your personal unique experience. One of the stories that you often heard for the first Original Sin, and I think will be the case for the second one also, was people talking to each other about what happened to them, and they had completely different stories, and which is essentially what it's all about, right? So I think that you're going to have two custom characters, and you'll talk to each other, you'll discover that you had completely different journeys through the game, hopefully.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you. So our final question then, I think.
Hiya. So I've been playing the enhanced edition of the first game, where it's obviously all voice acted. Is that something you're doing for this one?
We're doing like we did with the original classic edition. That is, we're voice acting the voice barks that you see, so the little text that appear, so that you don't have to read them, you hear them in the world. But with the actual recording of the dialogues, turns out that that was almost impossible because of the amount of permutations we have. We tried actually. You also notice that we have this third person, well, you can't see my screen anymore. We have this third person way of giving you the answers. So where it is like ask about, tell them that. We tried putting it in the first person, and the problem was that the different characters, even the different races, they would never talk like that. It just didn't make sense that they would talk like that. And by putting it in third person, we managed to like work our way around it. So if we were to do it, every dialogue in voice, we calculated that we had to do every single line 14 times. All right? And so this game has over 1 million words already. So if I multiply that by 14, you get about 14 million words. Now, if you start calculating how much time you have to spend in the studio then, this game is not going to ship for years. So that's why we're going to limit it to the voice barks.
Yeah. Okay.
For
thank
now,
you.
yes.
Okay, thank you everyone for your questions, but thank you most of all, Sven from Larian. Remember, Divinity Original Sin 2 is on Steam Early Access now. And remember, there's also another developer session after this at 3 p.m. That's Night and Bikes. But again, Sven, thank you very much.
All right, thank you everybody. Bye-bye.